This is a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.
Hello and welcome to the case of Chad and Lori. I'm Matt Davenport. It's a case unlike any we have ever seen. 2 children reported missing, 2 people currently in jail, and a long string of questions that stretch from Chandler, Arizona to Rexburg, Idaho. We start tonight by looking at the cast of people who were involved in this tragedy, and for that, here's Cesar Cornejo. Cesar.
Thank you, Matt. In the normally calm town of Rexburg, Idaho, a dark case of missing children has taken a turn for the worst. Today, we look at the case of the missing Rexburg children, Joshua J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, starting off with exactly who is involved in this dark, dreadful, and terrible case. As the case of the missing Rexburg children took a dark turn, we focused on who the integral people are in this insidious story. First, we look at Joshua J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, the deceased children that are the focal point of the case. JJ was the 7-year-old adopted son of Lori and Charles Vallow, and while he was autistic, he brought positivity to many people around him.
He's just so bright, and he's so funny, and he's just an amazing child.
He was adopted by Lori and Charles Vallow when he was only a few months old from Kay and Larry Woodcock. JJ was the biological grandson of Kay Woodcock. Next, we move on to Tylee, who was the 17-year-old biological daughter of Lori from a previous marriage. Even though she was still of school age, it has been documented that she did not attend school in Idaho. Both children were not seen or heard of since September of 2019 and have now been found deceased and buried under the property of Chad Daybell. The children were under the care of Lori Vallow Daybell at the time of their disappearance. Lori is the mother and main suspect in the case of the Rexburg missing children. Lori was born in San Bernardino, California, and had 4 previous marriages before her relationship with Chad Daybell. Lori was not only the parents to JJ and Tylee, but also Colby Ryan, Tylee's biological older brother. While in Arizona, Lori was known to be a fantastic mother to her children.
Lori was the mom I wanted to be. You know, adventures, going and constantly doing things, having fun, always being cheerful and upbeat.
But when she met Chad Daybell, that all changed. Chad is Lori's 5th husband, who she met while they were both still married to their late spouses. Lori was married to Charles, while Chad was married to Tammy Daybell. Chad is a novelist by profession and has written many books depicting the fall of American society, including many doomsday scenarios. Chad has played an important role for preppers within the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ through his books and is even known to be a leader among these groups that many consider to be cults. One couple who feared that this was a cult that Lori fell into are Kay and Larry Woodcock, the paternal grandparents of JJ. The radical change in her behavior coupled with the death of her ex-husband Charles troubled the grandparents. Kay and Larry raised JJ for the first few months of his life before Charles and Lori adopted him. This short time raising him led to their closeness with JJ, and why, even though they lived hundreds of miles away, would still be a presence in his life. They reside in Lake Charles, Louisiana, days away from where their grandson had last been seen.
One of the primary reasons for us being up here, this is the last known sighting of those 2 children.
Wanting to bring attention to the fact that these children had been missing for some time. But who is Charles Vallow exactly? We have heard of him in reference now a few times, so let's take a look. Charles Vallow, Lori's late ex-husband, was the brother of Kay Woodcock and the great-uncle and adoptive father of J.J. Vallow. Charles met his untimely death in Arizona nearly a year ago when he was shot by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. He was the first of many deaths in this wretched series of events. Charles is survived by an ex-wife and 2 children from a previous marriage before his marriage with Lori. This now brings us to Alex Cox, the late brother of Lori Vallow Daybell. Alex and Lori appeared to be close as he also moved to Idaho when Lori moved from Arizona. He was one of the last adults to be seen with the children in September when they went on a day trip to Yellowstone National Park. Alex met an early death in December of 2019 due to blood clots in his lungs. He was found in the bathroom of his apartment, unconscious and no longer breathing, by his wife's son. Paramedics took Alex to the hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. He is survived by his wife, who he had only been married to for 2 weeks. This also brings up the matter of another deceased spouse in Tammy Daybell, the late ex-wife of Chad Daybell. Tammy was married to Chad for nearly 2 decades before her passing in late 2019. She was said to have been full of life and joy by those who knew her. Once she passed away, Chad and Lori wasted no time in eloping 2 weeks later. Her death was very unexpected and even brought upon a second investigation. Authorities have exhumed Tammy's body to see if there was any foul play in the matters of her death. The suspicious death has also led authorities to believe that she was still alive when the children were thought to have been buried at the Daybell property. Tammy is survived by Chad and their 5 children. And while there are many other characters to this web of insidious and terrible events, these are the most important to understanding what exactly occurred in the missing Rexburg children case.
In the studio, I'm Cesar Cornejo. Matt, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Cesar. And still to come on the case of Chad and Lori, we take a look at the timeline of events in this case that has so many twists and turns.
You're watching a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.
And welcome back to the case of Chad and Lori. What started out as a search for 2 missing children last year turned out to be so much more. Journalist Julian Parras takes us from a journey from the day it started to where we are today. Julian.
Thank you, Matt. For those who are unfamiliar with this story, it sounds like a nightmare come to life. Kids go missing for months on end. The parents are reluctant to reveal the location of their children. And from there, a series of events spark headlines time after time again. This is the timeline of the case of Chad and Lori.
We have members of our evidence response team at a home in Fremont County this morning assisting in the execution of a search warrant.
June 9th, 2020. That was the date that police surrounded Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho. A search was conducted and police uncovered the remains of 2 children buried in Daybell's backyard. Those children were J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan.
The people who know what happened to them are Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell.
But before this fateful day, it all goes back to the fall of 2018, when Chad and Lori met for the first time. It's not extremely important compared to the rest of the timeline, but it kickstarts a chain of events that these 2 people would be linked to for the next year and a half to come. Fast forward to February of 2019. April Raymond, a good friend of Lori's at the time, gets a call from Lori. She asks April if she can visit her in Kauai, Hawaii, after she had gotten into a disagreement with a man named Charles Vallow, Lori's now deceased ex-husband. Lori invited April on a mission where 144,000 people would be admitted into an inner circle and transported to heaven before the end of the world. According to Chad and Lori, is July 22nd, 2020 of this year. April declined her offer. Lori flew back to Arizona. On July 11th, 2019, a week after Independence Day, Charles Vallow was shot twice in the chest by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. He died in Phoenix. That same day, Lori threw a pool party as if nothing even happened. Now, Lori took the responsibility of raising 2 kids with no husband while a mystery continued to build. September 8th was the last time Tylee was seen during a trip to Yellowstone National Park. September 23rd was the last time JJ was seen, as his mom took him out of a Rexburg school. October was a busy month. 2 shooting incidents occurred in Arizona and Idaho within a week of each other, the suspected shooter being Alex Cox. On October 9th, Tammy Daybell was encountered by someone shooting a paintball gun at her. The same day, an Amazon purchase was made for 2 malachite wedding bands, a purchase made by Charles Vallow, who at this point had been dead for more than 2 months. Where were the rings being shipped to? Rexburg, Idaho, the same town where Chad and Lori were living. 10 days later, Tammy Daybell dies in her sleep mysteriously. 2 weeks after that, on November 5th, the widower, Chad Daybell, and the widow, Lori Vallow, get married in Kauai.
The one piece of hard data that looks really incriminating is that he got married to this other gal 2 weeks after his wife passes on. I mean, that's just, you can't get around the implications of what that looks like.
November 26th, Rexburg police go to Lori's house to search for her, Chad, and the kids, but no one is home. December comes and another mysterious death took place on the 12th in Arizona. Alex Cox, Lori's brother, is now dead as well. Around the same time, a court order is served to Lori Vallow. If she doesn't show up with the kids in Rexburg by January 30th, she will be held in contempt of court. Another month goes by. Christmas and New Year's Eve eventually pass. Lori and Chad are still living in Hawaii, yet JJ and Tylee are still nowhere to be found. 26 days into the new year, Kauai police stop Chad and Lori in Princeville, Hawaii. It's the first time Chad and Lori are stopped and investigated by police, but authorities only search their car. Suspicions rise even more, and the case of the missing children fully circulates around Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell.
So much that East Idaho News reporters traveled to Hawaii themselves to get answers. But the married couple did not give in.
February 20th, Lori is arrested. Charges include desertion and non-support of dependent children, contempt of court, and a bail set for $5 million. Her bail would then be reduced to $1 million. The month of April eventually comes along, and a development is made in Tammy Daybell's death. Chad and Lori were investigated for conspiracy, attempted murder, and murder by the Idaho Attorney General's office.
This past May, Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother, posted this video wishing JJ a happy birthday in the midst of this investigation.
Our beloved JJ's 8th birthday is Monday, May 25th. We're always thinking of JJ. It never goes away. There's JJ remembrances all over this house. JJ, we look forward to kiss your sweet, beautiful face and hug you tightly. Happy birthday, Joshua Jackson Vallow. Mama and Papa love you.
Which brings us full circle to this fateful day, June 9th, 2020.
Investigators discovered what appeared to be unidentified human remains. Shortly after the remains were discovered, Chad Daybell was taken into custody and booked into the Fremont County Jail.
Since then, the families of both JJ and Tylee have received immense love and support, even from places as far as Canada and Australia.
So what's next? After all this time searching for the kids, hunting down the Daybells, what next?
Preliminary hearings for Chad Daybell will take place August 3rd and 4th, while hearings for Lori Vallow Daybell are scheduled for August 10th and 11th. In the studio, I'm Julian Parras. Matt, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian, and still to come.
I have a tendency to get very emotional when I talk about the children. I get extremely emotional when I talk about JJ. JJ is my heart.
We'll hear more from the grandparents of JJ Vallow, who've been at the front of this story since the beginning as the case of Chad and Lori continues.
You're watching a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.
Welcome back. Over the course of this case, two people we've interviewed many times are Larry and Kay Woodcock, the grandparents of Joshua JJ Vallow. Here's Deanne Coffin with more on the grandparents' journey.
Thank you, Matt. Kay and Larry Woodcock are the grandparents of Joshua JJ Vallow. I spoke with them several times throughout the search for JJ and Tylee Ryan. The Woodcocks initially reported JJ and Tylee missing after they hadn't heard from JJ for a long period of time. And despite getting let down at every corner they turned, they never gave up hope. Kay and Larry Woodcock got JJ right after he was born and kept him for the first 10 months of his life. Kay's brother Charles Vallow and his wife Lori asked them if they could adopt JJ. After much discussion, Kay and Larry decided it would be better in the long run for JJ to go to Charles and Lori.
Due to the fact that I am almost 73 years of age, and we felt that because of the age difference, the fact that Charles and Lori at that time were the absolute perfect parents.
JJ had autism and special needs, but the Woodcocks say that despite JJ's special needs, he was an exceptionally bright child.
The autism spectrum is there's either exceptionally bright and are severe problems. And we were fortunate, and he was so fortunate that he was an amazing child. He could read at 3.
Kay's brother Charles was shot and killed by Lori's brother Alex in July of 2019 at their home in Chandler, Arizona. Kay says Charles and Lori were separated at the time of Charles' death. She says Lori's brother Alex claimed self-defense.
Charles, and anybody that knows Charles, he was not a violent person. He did not do confrontations. He was, especially, with JJ right there, he wouldn't have done that in front of JJ.
Kay recalls Charles telling her that Lori had told him that JJ was too much for her to handle and she wanted JJ and Charles gone.
When my brother was murdered in July, imagine how upset we were knowing that, okay, Lori doesn't want JJ. Okay, now what? So I tried to maintain a cordial relationship with her on JJ's behalf, and it really didn't work that way, although, because she quit talking at all to any of us.
Any of our family, anybody.
In fact, the last time they heard from JJ was on a video call that lasted less than a minute in August of 2019. The Woodcocks say that Lori isn't the same person they once knew and loved.
It's unbelievable how somebody can change from the wonderful, warm, talented, very talented person she was to she won't even tell us where JJ's at. Tell us where Tylee's at, her own daughter, flesh and blood. And for that to change the way that it has, there is a huge story there.
The Woodcocks say that after Lori had moved to eastern Idaho, they were bothered by how JJ's appearance had changed.
Lori was a fanatic about making sure that he was always dressed. He had good clothes. She was a beautician, a hairdresser, and she really worked with a high-end clientele. And she loved to keep JJ looking like a model.
Very stylish. And every day she would style his hair, and JJ knew early on not to mess with his hair after Mama did it.
On January 7th, a news conference was held in Rexburg with the Woodcocks, the first time many of the media would get to meet Kay and Larry in person and hear their plea for missing 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and their grandson, 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow.
I have a tendency to get very emotional when I talk about the children. I get extremely emotional when I talk about JJ. JJ is my heart.
Now there's a $20,000 reward for information leading directly to the recovery of Joshua and Tylee. The Woodcocks made multiple trips out to eastern Idaho after this to meet with investigators.
This has been a very tumultuous ride for us and just for everyone. And so dealing with all these little events along the way since July 11th has been, sometimes we would feel like we got kicked in the teeth or punched in the gut, and it would take us a little while just to wrap our head around things that as things have progressed, that this person got attempted murder and they attempted to murder him, and then this person got attempted to murder, and then Chad's wife is dead, and then Alex is dead.
Not long after the news conference in Rexburg, Lori and her husband Chad Daybell were found in Hawaii.
Are your children still alive?
Well, we always had a hunch that's where she was. They're somewhere on the beach and where it was warm. And Hawaii is her favorite place to be.
Kay says that that's the first time she had ever seen Lori and Chad together, and still no sign of the kids.
I felt like she was arrogant. She was demeaning to the kids to not even acknowledge that they're missing or anything. And her little comment about when he said that people throughout the country are praying for him, and she said that's good, or to that effect.
Authorities in Madison County filed a child protection order and gave Lori 5 days to produce the kids in Rexburg. The day had come and gone, and still no sign of Chad, Lori, or the kids in Madison County.
We get so many communications from all over the world regarding this that this is how we keep our sanity. When we get so many people saying such good things about JJ, saying good things about Tylee, and then, praying for everybody. It is so uplifting. It is so very uplifting. And it keeps our spirits up. And it's not to say that we don't have days that we just have bad days. We do. But all it takes is a couple of good texts and our messages, and it does. It just puts it all into a different perspective, and we try not to let it get us down.
But through it all, the Woodcocks never gave up hope.
We miss JJ so much, and we worry about him so much. We worry about his health. We just want to see him. And at this point, we pray every day and constantly that JJ is safe, that Tylee is safe. But if they're not, then at least they would be able to say, something happened to him. We did something to him. And we would accept it. It would be extremely hard. The good thing is Kay and I are both using counseling, and that is important, and all the prayers that go with that.
The Woodcocks attended Lori's hearing in Madison County in March of 2020, where they were front and center as Lori walked by them in the courtroom.
Her arrogance is very obvious in that. I was in a position in the courtroom where, obviously I was the closest one to her. And I kept seeing the smirks and the arrogance of her actions.
After the hearing, the Woodcocks came out of the courtroom to be swarmed by media from all over the country. And with their continued focus on JJ and Tylee, they faced the cameras head on.
All I want is the kids. Where are the kids? Bring the children forward. That's what this is all about.
After months of searching for JJ and Tylee and focusing on where the kids were, the Woodcocks refused to think the worst.
I want to believe that those children are alive and that I'm going to see JJ and Tylee. I'm going to see them again.
But the Woodcocks would soon face their worst nightmare. On June 9th, JJ and Tylee's remains were found buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. The Woodcocks came to eastern Idaho to be where JJ and Tylee's remains were found. Kay tells me that there will be 3 services held for JJ and Tylee, one in Rexburg, one in Phoenix, and one in Lake Charles, Louisiana. She also says that they will travel to Idaho for the next hearing in August. Reporting in the studio, I'm Deanne Coffin. Matt, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Deanne. Still to come on the case of Chad and Lori, we talk with the county prosecutor about what people can expect now that this case is making its way through the court system. Stay with us.
You're watching a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.
And welcome back. The investigation into the deaths of JJ and Tylee have just entered the court system. Both Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow are facing charges, though none of the charges deal with who actually killed the children. I talked with the county prosecutor, who's not directly involved in this case, to get a legal perspective on what's happening.
I am joined now at this time by Prosecutor Vic Pearson. He's a prosecutor with Franklin County and a former chief deputy prosecutor with Bannock County. Thank you so much, Mr. Pearson, for joining us on this special. I want to ask you some questions, and they're more legal questions. They're more broad legal questions rather than specific to the Chad and Lori Daybell case, but just to help people understand the legal process and what's going on in a case like this that is very complex, that is very broad, that has a lot of different branches on this legal tree. So let me just start by asking, let's just start with the basics. If a person is arrested for one or more felony crimes, then what are the stages that the case makes as it makes its way through the judicial process? What are the key points in the process?
So the first hearing that an individual will have will be in front of a magistrate court, and that's their initial appearance. At that initial appearance, things are going to be discussed, such as bond and any terms of release if a person is able to post the bond. Probably the most important thing that happens at that initial appearance is they're set for what we call a preliminary hearing. Preliminary hearing is a probable cause hearing. So we always hear about proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a standard that's held at jury trials. At the preliminary hearing, it's just a probable cause hearing, so it's a lower standard of proof that has to be proven to a magistrate court. If the prosecuting attorney is successful at that preliminary hearing, then it's going to be bound over to the district court, so in front of a district court judge. That is the first stage where an individual is asked how they plead. So an individual will either say guilty or not guilty. In a case like this, certainly an individual is going to plead not guilty at the very beginning, regardless of what proof is there or not there. Then they'll be set for a jury trial date and also a pretrial date. That's where a lot of the so-called plea negotiations and discussions will take place before the trial. And then ultimately there's a trial that would take place or a guilty plea is entered. And if either of those things result in a either guilty plea or a guilty verdict by a jury, then you're set for a sentencing hearing. Obviously, there's a lot of stages to this process, Matt. Prior to the sentencing, but after a finding of guilt, an individual goes through what we call a pre-sentence investigation. And at that pre-sentence investigation, they're interviewed by the Department of Corrections, who makes a report. It's a very lengthy report, 50, 60, 70 pages long, that gives us a lot of background on the individual, some more information about the case itself that the judge has provided, and it makes a recommendation of whether somebody should receive a probation sentence or a prison sentence. This whole process takes a long time, but that's kind of the process in a nutshell.
Okay. Now, as far as these type of cases go, on the short side, how long could it take? And then on the long side, how long could that take?
Sure. So a pretty simple case is going to take roughly 3 months from charging to sentencing. And that's a rough estimate, but it's certainly not a quick process. When we're talking about a case such as this, like the Daybell case, it's obviously complicated, and there's lots of different branches that are going to be on this tree. And this is a case that certainly isn't going to be on the short end of the process. This is a case that could take a year, could take 2 years, could take longer. There's just no way to necessarily predict what's going to take place and how long it's going to occur, but it's certainly not going to be a 3-month process.
Now, in a case like what we're talking about today, it crosses jurisdictional boundaries. We're talking right now, as it stands, a couple different counties having to work together, but it could possibly entail different states working together. As a prosecutor, how is it working that with different jurisdictional boundaries from county to county to state?
So certainly crimes can occur in different counties within the state of Idaho. When that occurs, each county has the ability to charge what crimes they feel are appropriate in their individual jurisdictions. Those may be similar crimes, they may be different crimes, but they just happened in each of the jurisdictions. When that happens, usually the prosecuting attorneys will work together to form some type of a resolution or an idea of what that resolution will be. But the reality of it is each prosecuting attorney in each county has the ability to form their own opinions and make their own decisions. It becomes a little bit more complicated when we talk about crossing state lines for crimes, because there certainly isn't quite as much cooperation and camaraderie between the prosecuting attorneys that there is among counties, but it works very much the same way crossing state lines. For instance, in Franklin County, I border Utah. And so individuals will commit crimes in the state of Utah and also commit crimes here in Franklin County. So I'll call up the prosecuting attorney in Utah and speak with them about this case and what their thoughts are. But ultimately, we each have to come to our own conclusion and make our own determination of what's right. But there is a great deal of cooperation between us.
Now, we briefly touched upon this a little bit earlier, but in your experience, have you ever worked a case where you've called in for help from the Attorney General's office? And what kind of, what kind of help can they provide to a federal case?
Sure. It's pretty common to request assistance from the Attorney General's office. Assistance may be needed based upon a conflict of interest. So maybe there's some type of conflict that makes it so you're not able to be the prosecuting attorney for one reason or another. In a case such as the Daybell case, I know there was a request made by local prosecutors to have the Attorney General's assistance. And I think that request was made based upon their ability to provide extra resources from investigators to prosecutors. A small office such as mine, where I'm the only prosecutor in my office, I just certainly don't have the time and resources to devote to a case such as this, because it's going to take a whole lot of time every single day, and yet we still have to do every other case that's going on. So a lot of small offices will make those requests to the Attorney General's office for assistance. And that assistance, like I said, Matt, includes investigation and prosecution. That can come in a couple different forms. So the Attorney Generals can ask for, say, well, we'll take the case, but we're going to take it from start to finish. You'll have no decision making in it, local prosecutor, and we're just going to kind of take it for everything it's worth. We'll make all the decisions, whether it be plea agreements, whether they be anything, sentencing agreements, or there can be a request made for assistance that includes the prosecuting attorney's assistance. So the prosecutor will say, I want to be involved in this case, and I want to be the one making the ultimate decisions about what happens, but I also want your expertise and resources at my hand to help me better prepare my case for trial.
Okay. Final question now. As a prosecutor's office, how do you battle against the court of public opinion when a court case like the one we're talking about now receives a lot of public notoriety? How do you fight that? How do you work against it, for it?
This is certainly the most difficult position for victims family, and the public in general, because we all see what we read on the news or see on the TV, and we all form opinions based upon that. But unfortunately, that court of public opinion just doesn't happen as fast as we want it to. There's a system of justice in place that we have to follow, and the wheels of justice just aren't always as fast as we want them to be. It takes a while to get from start to finish, like we discussed earlier. The reality of it is, as I stated, justice just isn't swift, but we want justice in every single case. So in a case like this, we look at the facts and circumstances and we go, we have a job to do. We need to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. But we also have to understand that no matter what happens, there's no explaining the loss of JJ and Tylee in this case. There's nothing that the prosecuting attorney can do or a judge can do that's going to explain what happened. What we can do is make sure that justice is served. That justice may not be quick, but we want it to be fair, and we want it to hold those that are responsible for what happened to these two young individuals, and we want to hold them accountable. And that's what we're ultimately looking for, is justice, Matt.
All right, Prosecutor Vic Pearson of Franklin County, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Have a good day.
And coming up, we go back to what this case is all about, the two children who are no longer with us, as the case of Chad and Lori continues.
You're watching a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.
Throughout this whole case, from their disappearance to the discovery of their bodies, it centers on two children, Joshua J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Here's Kate Garner with a look at the lives of these young souls.
Thanks, Matt. For nearly a year, the nation has turned its focus to J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. their brother gives us a better idea of who these two kids were.
Egg.
Egg.
Say hello.
Say hello.
Hi, JJ.
Hi, JJ.
Hi, Colby.
Hi, Colby.
You're so cute.
Joshua Jackson Vallow, more commonly known as JJ, was born on May 25, 2012. His parents, Lori Daybell, Lori Vallow at the time, and Charles Vallow. Charles is now deceased. His older sister Tylee Ashley Ryan was born on September 24, 2002. Her parents, Lori Vallow, Lori Ryan at the time, and Joseph Ryan. Joseph is also now deceased. JJ is often remembered as a lively, rambunctious, sweet, and loving boy. JJ's oldest sibling, Colby Ryan, may best describe him.
And then JJ, oh my gosh, dude, I love JJ so much. He's such a character. Like, he loves surgery. I don't know why he was so obsessed with having surgery or giving people surgery. Like, he would sit there and like give me fake surgeries. It's so funny. And we used to play like games all the time. He and I would swim in the pool and we would just talk. And same thing was happening with him. He was growing up so fast too, so we would just have conversations. And I remember when Kelsey got pregnant, he was just talking to me. He's like, yeah, gonna have a baby, pregnancy. And he was just talking about like, what our daughter would look like. And he had a name for her too that he always named her, which was funny. I think it was like Sarah or something. He just totally made up a name. And he's like, no, that's her name. And we like getting like stupid arguments about it and stuff. So he's so cute. And he was just growing up so fast and getting so tall and big and just like, he's just was developing so quickly.
Tylee is often remembered as full of laughter and life. She would commonly post on her social media accounts pictures with her friends and pictures at church activities. But what she posted about even more often was her family, especially her mom. The two are seen in one of Tylee's Instagram posts on the beach. Tylee's caption reads, quote, "My love for my mom grows every day. She is truly the best person for the job. Through everything we have been through as a family and as individuals, her faith just gets stronger. She's the best example of how I want to be as a mother someday." In another post, she and her mother are kissing JJ on either side. Tylee's caption is a quote from L. Tom Perry, an apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It reads, quote, "Family is the center of life. It is key to eternal happiness." Tylee's older brother Colby may describe her best.
Tylee, she is a short teenager. She doesn't like being called short, but she's just, feisty. She's funny. She has very dry humor. And, she loves Friends in the office. And, we just started getting to that point where we were starting to really joke around more, not adult. I don't want to say adult in like a bad way, like we were like saying bad things, but she was saying things that just is funny to hear your little siblings growing up and saying like things like adults, like they know stuff. They drive cars. Like it becomes funny when you see someone that's always been younger than you start to like grow up. So she's just super funny. She, and we've just really started building our relationship over the past couple of years. She's been through a lot in her life, just like I have. But for her, she is so strong and sweet, and she really just has been growing into her own. And, she has just really stepped up. She's so strong, and I just, I miss her. I miss her for just being around her and just the simplicity. She loves to she's just like a down for whatever. Like, we want to watch a movie. What do you want to watch? She's like, whatever. That's just how we are. But it's just, it's just so fun to have that around.
The children disappeared in September of 2019. And as the days turned to weeks and the weeks turned to months, the community would not forget about the two. Private billboards went up with the kids' information. Signs, shirts, and even cupcakes reminded the community that these two children still needed to be found. On what would have been JJ's 8th birthday, his classmates held a candlelight vigil in his honor. JJ's brother Colby also opened up to talk about the kids on that particular day.
I hope that today you feel loved always and surrounded in the Lord's love. I pray that you are just comfortable. I pray that no matter what, you just feel safe and you feel protected. And I pray that you just feel the Spirit. And I'm just praying that whatever's going on, that you're just full of joy today, because you are just a joy to everyone else. You just bring joy. I feel like that's one of your main spiritual gifts, is just joy. You just walk into a room and just make people attracted to the light that you are. People see that you are just such a beautiful person, JJ. You just make people happy, and you've made me happy for a long time as your brother. You're just such a special kid. And Tylee, you were such a strong, beautiful sister, and I miss you guys. I think about you guys a lot. There's a lot of pain that goes behind that, and I'm trying to keep my composure when it comes to a lot of different things. But the main point is that I love you both. Happy birthday, JJ. I just love you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful you came into our lives.
Just weeks after JJ's birthday, law enforcement searched Chad Daybell's property in Salem. He is the current husband of Lori. On the property, they found human remains belonging to 2 people, which would later be identified as those of JJ and Tylee. Friends, community members, and strangers held memorials for the kids in multiple states. One of the biggest took place in Idaho Falls.
We love those kids. We are here for those kids. This is not what we wanted, imagined, or any of us hoped for. This conclusion is our worst nightmare come true. And the only thing we can do is rally together and try and light up the sky with purple and blue.
At that same candlelight vigil, JJ Vallow's grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, couldn't attend, but had a letter read out loud on their behalf.
We appreciate the outpouring of love and support received from you all in Idaho. We love all of you so much. Bless you for carrying us through this nightmare. We are comforted knowing JJ and Tylee are within the love of their daddy's arms now.
After JJ and Tylee were found in Arizona, the community showed its support to Colby Ryan by placing blue and purple ribbons around his apartment complex. Blue and purple being JJ and Tylee's favorite colors.
As the case surrounding the Daybells continued to develop, Colby and his wife Kelsey began to experience some financial hardships due to the situation. A GoFundMe has been set up in their name, along with more information on what the couple has dealt with the last 10 months. Reporting in the studio, I'm Cade Garner. Back to you, Matt.
Okay, thank you very much, Cade. Well, we've talked about the case of Chad and Lori and what has led up to now. We'll now take a look at what could be expected as the court case moves into the next phase. That's next.
You're watching a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.
So, what's next in the case of Chad and Lori? Both defendants have court hearings scheduled for August. The judge in both cases has ruled that because witnesses are set to testify at the couple's preliminary hearings, both Chad and Lori need to be physically present in the room with their lawyers in order to preserve their rights to confront and cross-examine witnesses in person. Protective plexiglass is being installed along the bench and witness stand. Also, the court is limiting the amount of people allowed inside. Vallow is set to appear on August 10th and 11th, facing 2 felony charges of conspiracy to destroy or conceal evidence, as well as several misdemeanors. Daybell will have his preliminary hearing August 3rd and 4th and is charged with felony destruction or concealment of evidence and conspiracy to destroy or conceal evidence. And as the case makes its way through the judicial system, we'd like to remind everyone that the defendants that are featured in this story are considered innocent until proven guilty. And that'll do it for the case of Chad and Lori. Good night, and thank you for watching.
This is a special report, the case of Chad and Lori.